Welcome back to another Genshin Interact video. Let us know down in the comments if this guide was helpful or if you have any other tips about NAHIDA. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Thank you for watching, now on to the video.
Lesser Lord Kusanali, or NAHIDA, is getting her first rerun as we are getting near the end of the Sumeru arc. First, let's take a look at her talents and the priority of leveling them up. Arguably the best Dendro support the game has to offer, NAHIDA's kit is built around buffing her teammates and even outputting a good amount of damage in the process. NAHIDA's elemental skill should be top priority when leveling her talents. Her skill can be pressed or held. If you press her skill, she will mark opponents that are around her in a small AoE with the Seed of Skanda. If you hold her skill, you can aim her skill to mark multiple opponents from close and far distances with the Seed of Skanda, and her resistance to interruption will be increased when in aiming mode. The Seed of Skanda will link enemies if they are close to each other. When elemental reactions are triggered on marked enemies, Dendro damage will be dealt on marked enemies and enemies connected to marked enemies. This instance of damage is called Tri-Karma Purification. NAHIDA's burst is where she brings even more damage to the team. When using NAHIDA's burst, she gains effects based on the elemental types of other party members. Pyro characters increase NAHIDA's skill effect damage when inside her burst. Electro characters increase the speed that Tri-Karma Purification damages opponents when inside her burst. Hydro characters will increase the duration of the burst. We would say to crown your skill first, since this will be why people go after NAHIDA. After the skill, you can crown your burst. This will help NAHIDA's overall damage to help support the team. We suggest keeping her normal attack talent at level 1, never mind crowning this talent. The best way to build NAHIDA's talents without using too many materials is to go with a level 1 normal attack talent, a level 8 skill talent, and a level 8 burst talent.
Aside from talents, we now take a quick look at NAHIDA's passive talents. Her first passive talent increases the active character's elemental mastery by 25% of the elemental mastery of the character in your team who has the highest amount of elemental mastery. You can get a maximum of 250 elemental mastery this way. In other words, NAHIDA will, quote, grab a portion of elemental mastery from another party member if they possess a higher elemental mastery than NAHIDA herself. This means that you don't necessarily need a bunch of elemental mastery on NAHIDA all the time, provided you use someone else with high elemental mastery, which we will talk about later in the team section. This elemental mastery increase is given to the character as long as they stay within NAHIDA's burst field. Her second passive talent increases the damage and crit rate of Tri-Karma Purification for every point of elemental mastery over 200. Her last talent is a bit different than other third passive talents. NAHIDA can use her hold skill to pick up certain harvestable items around the world of Teyvat, and she can read the minds of most NPCs in Sumeru. Moving on to artifact sets and stats, NAHIDA has two main sets she can use. These two sets are Deepwood Memories and Gilded Dreams. The 2-piece Deepwood Memory set gives a 15% Dendro damage bonus, and the 4-piece decreases enemies' Dendro resistance by 30% when they are hit by elemental skills or bursts. Not only does the damage bonus and resistance decrease help, but this set can trigger its effects while the character is off field. This will be the most recommended set as it is universally her best set and makes her the best support that she can be. The other set is Gilded Dreams. This set will be better if you want to build NAHIDA for more personal damage. The 2-piece set increases elemental mastery by 80, and the 4-piece set increases attack and elemental mastery depending on the elemental types of your party members. The only reason we would recommend using this set is if you already have a team member using a 4-piece Deepwood Memories set. Because you will be using NAHIDA in mostly Dendro-heavy teams, the 4-piece Deepwood effect is a high priority to at least have on someone to increase those Dendro numbers. These could even be characters who do not wield Dendro, like Kokomi and Zhongli as good examples. The main stats you want to look for on your Sands, Goblet, and Circlet are Elemental Mastery for all three of them if you are going for a full support build. If you want to balance between damage and supporting capabilities, then you can use an Elemental Mastery Sands, a Dendro damage bonus Goblet, and crit rate or crit damage Circlet. The substats you should look for are crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, Elemental Mastery, and energy recharge. We would usually advise that stats are more valuable than the set bonus for most any given character you are building, but in this case, the 4-piece set bonus that Deepwood Memories provides is going to be just as important as the main stats you want, if not even more. The set is just too valuable to pass up when using a Dendro-related team. The same can be said of any character who uses a vitally important and supportive set like Deepwood Memories and even Viridescent Venerer, since the focus is to buff the other damage dealers and ultimately the overall team's damage output. Of course, if you are planning to use Gilded Dreams on your Nahida, then the stats you are looking for become more important than the set itself since you are going for personal damage.
Although artifact sets and stats are very important, the next major part of a character's build is their weapon. Nahida can use a few different 4-star and 5-star weapons. Nahida's best in slot weapon is her 5-star, 1000 Floating Dreams. This weapon gives 265 elemental mastery at level 90. This weapon gives multiple buffs. The abilities at Refinement 1 are as follows. The wielder of this weapon will get an increase of 32 elemental mastery for every party member's elemental type that is the same as the character using this weapon. Basically, for every character that has Dendro as their elemental type, Nahida will get 32 elemental mastery for each character. The wielder will receive a 10% elemental damage bonus of their elemental type for every party member that has a different elemental type to the wielder. Lastly, all nearby party members will have their elemental mastery increased by 40. Note that this last effect can stack with other elemental mastery buffs from other weapons on other characters. The other 5-star we could recommend for Nahida is a little more centralized on damage. Kagura's Verity is that weapon. This weapon increases crit damage by 66.2% at level 90. The ability on this weapon gives the Kagura Dance effect. This effect increases elemental damage when using an elemental skill by 12% for 16 seconds and has a max of 3 stacks. This can give you 36% elemental skill damage. When you have all 3 stacks, you gain an additional 12% all elemental damage bonus on the character. Now on to 4 stars. This weapon fits the role of damage Nahida and support Nahida. The main stat gives 55.1% crit damage at level 90. The ability on this weapon gives one random effect for 10 seconds when the character switches onto the field. This effect can only occur once every 30 seconds, so be mindful of this when deciding when to pull out Nahida in your rotation. These effects are all at Refinement 1. The first effect increases attack by 60%. The second effect increases all elemental damage bonus by 48%. And the third effect increases elemental mastery by 240. Another 4-star to use is Sacrificial Fragments. This weapon gives 221 elemental mastery at level 90. This weapon has a 40% chance to end its own cooldown at Refinement 1. At Refinement 1, this can only be done once every 30 seconds, but you really only want Nahida's Dendro application from her skill most of the time, so having the skill back consistently is nice but not necessary. There are some other 4-stars that could be used like Wandering Evenstar and even Solar Pearl, but the previously mentioned weapons are recommended higher. Nahida's personal weapon, 1000 Floating Dreams, will be best for her, but she can make great use of all the weapons mentioned.
Now that we've talked about weapons, let's take a look at Nahida's Constellations. Her first constellation is going to add 1 to each elemental related buff that Nahida's Burst gives to herself. So going back to her Burst, notice that it grants buffs to Nahida based on the elemental types of characters in your party. This first constellation just adds 1 when granting these buffs to make them more effective. This will still add 1 to each buff type even if that element is not present in your party. Nahida's second constellation is probably her best. Now, when Nahida marks enemies with her skill, it allows for some crazy changes. It will enable Burning, Bloom, Hyperbloom, and Burgeon reactions to crit. The crit rate for these reactions is fixed at 20% and the crit damage is fixed at 100%. When you cause Quicken, Aggravate, or Spread on an enemy after marking him with Nahida's skill, his defense will be decreased by 30%. The third and fifth constellations will upgrade her skill talents by 3. Nahida's fourth constellation simply means that after you mark enemies with Nahida's skill, Nahida will gain elemental mastery based on how many enemies you marked. If you mark just one enemy, Nahida will gain 100 elemental mastery, and you can see in the in-game description how much elemental mastery she gets for marking more than one enemy. Nahida can only gain a maximum of 160 elemental mastery from this constellation. So if you mark 5 enemies, this does not mean Nahida gains 180 elemental mastery as some might think, but instead she still gets the 160. Finally, Nahida's 6th constellation turns her into an insane on-field damage dealer. Basically, you must use Nahida's skill to mark an enemy or a group of enemies and use her burst. After that, when Nahida hits one of the enemies she has marked with her skill with normal or charged attacks, she will unleash what is called Karmic Oblivion on all the enemies tethered from her skill. This is only slightly different from how her skill works, but it is important to note that this is not her skill and acts separately from it. However, the damage that this Karmic Oblivion deals is considered skill damage. It will deal Dendro damage based on 200% of Nahida's attack and 400% of her elemental mastery combined. This ability can be triggered every 0.2 seconds and will last up to 10 seconds or until it is unleashed 6 times. Even though you might think that Karmic Oblivion could be used more than once due to how long Nahida's burst lasts, the truth is that this ability can only be used once every time she uses her burst. Even though all of these constellations can help Nahida and your team massively, she still brings a lot of unsurpassed abilities to your team at Constellation 0.
Nahida is the best Dendro support in the game, but who is she best paired up with? We're going to take a look at a few different teams that Nahida works best in. The first team is a Hyperbloom team. Remember that the Electro character on a Hyperbloom team and the Pyro character on a Burgeon team should have a high elemental mastery because they are the ones that are creating the Hyperbloom and Burgeon reaction. A base team we will start with is Ayato, Kuki, Nahida, and Yelan for Hyperbloom. Ayato and Yelan will have enough application with Nahida's skill to create the Bloom cores, and Kuki's skill will heal your team, as well as Hyperblooming the Dendro cores created by the other party members. Other Hydro characters to switch out in place of Yelan and Ayato are Xingqiu and Barbara. Other Dendro characters to use alongside Nahida are Alhaitham if you need an on-field damage dealer, and Dendro main character in Kale if you want more Dendro application. If you don't have a healer on the team or Kuki isn't healing as much since she's on a full Elemental Mastery build, Yao can be a good Dendro support for this type of team. Some other Electro characters besides Kuki to create the Hyperbloom reaction could be Raiden, Keqing, and even Sino. Make sure you only have one on-field character to maximize their damage. Although Hyperbloom is arguably the best Dendro reaction for damage, two other good and fun reactions to try with Nahida are Spread and its counterpart Aggravate. A base team to look at is Raiden, Nahida, Kuki, and Yao. Your on-field damage dealer will be creating the Spread or Aggravate reaction, while the other characters on the team are applying Dendro and Electro to create Quicken to get ready for Spread and Aggravate reactions. Some substitutes for the on-field characters are Keqing, Sino, and even Lisa for Aggravate reactions. Some substitutes for the on-field characters are Alhaitham and Tainari for spread reactions. Other Dendro supports to help create reactions alongside Nahida are Kale, Dendro main character, and Yao. Electro supports to use could be Yayamiko, Beidou, Fischl, Lisa, and Dori. If you are looking to get higher Aggravate numbers, you could possibly throw in a 4-piece Viridescent Venera user like Kazuha, Sucrose, Jean, and even Sayu to buff those Electro numbers. Another team Nahida can be helpful with is a Burgeon team. Look at the characters we discussed in the Hyperbloom section, but replace the Electro characters with either Toma or Diluc. Diluc would be the on-field character, so make sure to surround him with Dendro and Hydro supports to allow him to maximize his Burgeon numbers. Once again, Diluc should have a high elemental mastery since he will be creating the Burgeon reaction, as well as Toma. On the other team, Toma would be the off-field Burgeon procer instead of Kuki in the Hyperbloom team we discussed earlier. Pairing Toma and Nahida with an on-field Hydro damage dealer will allow the cores to be created quickly as well as vaporize reactions here and there. By the way, Nahida's burst is nice and useful for multiple reaction teams that are not Dendro specific, since the buff and elemental mastery can help them.
In the upcoming gameplay, I will be showcasing 3 types of teams that Nahida really brings together. I wanted to use teams that utilize 4 stars and free characters around Nahida to show just how powerful they can be for the sake of free-to-play and new players. Of course, you can always substitute these characters with better 5-star options and other characters who can fit certain roles better if you do have them. The first team is an Aggravate team using Lisa, Nahida, Fischl, and Yao. The second team is a Burgeon team using Nahida, Xingqiu, Yao, and Xiangling, who is on an EM build. The third team is a Hyperbloom team using the same characters but just substituting Fischl on an EM build for Xiangling. My Nahida uses a Widsith with a 4-piece Deepwood memory set, level 6, 9, and 8 talents, and has 529 elemental mastery. I have built half damage and half support to showcase a little bit of both ends to how she can be used. Yao is also present in every team, so she can act as the healer and give Dendro resonance when used with Nahida. She uses a 4-piece tenacity to give everyone more attack. For the Burgeon and Hyperbloom teams, Xingqiu is using Sacrificial Sword and has 232% ER. Xiangling is built only for high EM, sitting at 1036. Lastly, Fischl is built the same way only for the Hyperbloom team, sitting at 889 EM. In the Aggravate team, however, she is built for straight damage with 2-piece attack percent sets. Enjoy the gameplay.
Thank you for watching the video. If you have any extra tips or tricks you know or use with your own Nahida, please go ahead and let us know in the comments. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next one.